this is a business. It's prize fighting. So you got business people telling you this fight makes more business sense. It can't just be for the glory and for the legacy and to please the fans. This is a business. So I think that Canelo made the right business decision, moving up to light heavyweight.
I'm not saying he didn't.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he didn't. We're talking about right now.
I gotta agree with Ak right there, Mannix. You just, I mean, you're a writer. Choose the right word. You said avoided or scared or no, that's not. It's a business decision.
No, hold on. Said none of those words. None of those words came out of my mouth.
Said went out his way. Went out his way.
Scared or avoided. It was something along
either.
the lines where he's avoiding him or he doesn't
Didn't say
fears
that.
him. No, that's not the
Didn't
case.
say that. Welcome into a special edition of the Dazn Boxing Show. I'm Chris Mannix, joined by former junior middleweight champion, Latino Heat himself, Sergio Mora, and Dazn Boxing Show's own aficionados, Ak and Barak, co-host of the aforementioned Dazn Boxing Show. Today we're going to take a closer look at the biggest star in boxing, that being Canelo Alvarez. And we'll ask the question many boxing fans and quite frankly fighters at this point are eagerly awaiting: what's next for Canelo? So what does the future hold for the undisputed super middleweight? Fights at 168 pounds? A run at light heavyweight? Or what about a fight to cement his legacy? We will look at each of these options and try to determine what is next for Canelo. We started the division, only took Canelo 11 months to rule super middleweight. We've heard the rumors of Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, and Triple G moving up to get the trilogy. Fight fans still desperately want to see that trilogy. David Benavidez is out there as well. Ak, let's start with you. Of the four fighters I just mentioned, who do you think would be the most likely for Canelo to fight next?
Well, Barack and I talked about this on the show earlier this week. I mean, I'm thinking Charlo now. Keep in mind, all of these fights are great. And at this point in Canelo's career, it's like damn if you do, damn if you don't with him. It doesn't matter who he fights. People are going to attack him. If he goes up to light heavyweight, they're going to say those guys aren't really that skilled. If he goes to cruiserweight and fights, that guy, he's not a good fighter. If he fights guys that are coming up in weight, there's always going to be a problem. But the reason why I like the Jermall Charlo fight is I know Charlo's resume isn't super deep, but the guy does have a couple of good, names on his resume. He beat Austin Trout. Austin Trout had only lost to Lara and Canelo at the time. He went on to beat Derevchenko, and Derevchenko's body type is similar to Canelo. No, I'm not comparing him to Canelo as far as skills, but he has fast hands. He's coming from that similar stance, moving forward, and that he obviously looked good against Derevchenko, and he does have a name. People are intrigued about that matchup, about the Charlo matchup. Even though Charlo is not a super middleweight, he's a champion at middleweight, a WBC champion. And Chris, I know you want to see Jermall Charlo and Andre, but putting that fight to the side, since we're talking Canelo, to me the most intriguing matchup might not be the biggest fight. I know Triple G is still the biggest fight for Canelo, but the most intriguing matchup for me is Jermall Charlo.
Charlo Andre, that's an intriguing idea. I've never actually considered that on any level. Sergio, you heard Ak talk about Triple G being the biggest fight. And it probably still is. I mean, whether you're in East LA or in Boston, you walk down the street and people know Triple G Canelo off the heels of those two great fights back in 2017 and 2018. So looking at Triple G now, as he approaches 40 years old, why should Canelo take a Golovkin fight now?
Yeah, walk down the mean streets of Boston, right, Chris? And you'll find out, people have a liking for Triple G, and they want to see the trilogy because there's unfinished business there. There's closure. And if you look at the greatest trilogies of all time, of course, Ali Frazier, that wasn't needed. It ended in a knockout. Look at the fight of the year last year with Fury and Wilder. That wasn't needed. and that was fight of the year. This is that type of fight. You mentioned it. Golovkin's already going to be pushing 40. The first 2 fights were razor thin, but a lot of people have that type of memory where they forget real quick, and the young guns come in and they look at the Charlos, the Beterbievs, and everyone else, the Joe Smiths and Benavidez. They want the young guys. I still want the Triple G fight because there's unfinished business there. I need the closure. You know, I watched both these guys. They were razor thin, both fights. I need that closure. I know the way the fight's gonna end. I think the majority of the people are gonna know how it ends, but I still need to see it. I still need to see that knockout.
So Barack, the only true super middleweight in that bunch is David Benavidez, who has been a 2-time champion at 168 pounds. When Eddie Reynoso, the trainer and manager for Canelo, talks about Benavidez, he's pretty dismissive. He sort of shrugs his shoulders and said he hasn't really done anything to earn that type of fight. What do you think Benavidez has to do? What's it going to take for Benavidez to get a Canelo fight?
Well, first of all, I think that Eddie Reynoso thinks that Benavidez is young and he's inexperienced and he hasn't fought good caliber fighters. But you know what? I think when you ask that question, what is it going to take? Absolutely nothing. You know why? Because Benavidez has already gained the love of the people. Now, if you think about this, this reminds me statistically, because it's kind of like almost identical to 2013 when Floyd fought Canelo. Floyd was the pound for pound #1 guy in the world. He was champion in 2 weight divisions, super welterweight and welterweight. And then here you had Canelo was the #1 guy in the Ring magazine. So Floyd was the champion, the Ring magazine champion, and Canelo was the #1 guy. Canelo was undefeated. Canelo was 8 years into his career. He was on a roll, beating everybody, beating all the guys he was supposed to beat. He was also unified champion, and he was the biggest guy and the strongest guy in the division. Fast forward now to 2022, Canelo's that guy. He's that #1 guy. He's the guy that's champion in 2 different divisions. He's that franchise champion that you love, Chris, that belt, you know, in middleweight. And he's also the Ring magazine champion. And well, he has every belt in super middleweight. So it's almost identical. And then you have Benavidez, undefeated, 2-time champion, biggest and strongest guy, also 8 years into his career. Canelo got the chance from Mayweather. It's time, if possible, it's time for Canelo to give Benavidez that chance. Because think about it, Floyd could have fought the WBO champion at that time, which is Timothy Bradley, and Timothy Bradley was the #3 guy on the pound for pound list behind Andre Ward. You know, but no, he chose.
But guess what? If Floyd would have fought Timothy Bradley, the fight wouldn't have did the numbers it did. It did it because
no
of Canelo
kidding, and that's what I'm about to say. And if you be quiet and listen, like I did when you was talking, if you be quiet and listen, you let me finish my point.
Benavidez is not going to offer what Canelo offered Floyd to Canelo. Benavidez is not going to offer the same thing. Why should he?
No kidding, no kidding. But is he going to offer more than Charlo? He's a Mexican fighter. Is he gonna offer more than Charlo? Possibly.
Yes, more danger.
Is he gonna offer more than Andre? Possibly. And you know what? There's no excuses because Benavidez is already a 168 pounder. So it just makes sense. It's identical to when Floyd was fighting Canelo. Now size level, no, of course. In popularity, of course it's not the same. But still, it's just the right thing now. Now, am I saying that Canelo can't fight Charlo? No. Should he fight him? Yeah. Should he fight Andre? Yeah. Should he fight Triple G? Yeah. But you asked me, can I make a case for Benavidez? And I think I just did.
Well, allow me to make my case for Demetrius Andrade, because while I'll never refer to great Sergio. I love that Sergio criticized Demetrius Andrade. Sergio, a guy that nobody wanted to fight either. So Demetrius Andrade is someone that you should have something in common with. Andrade was a title holder at 154 pounds when Canelo was a title holder at 154 pounds. Canelo didn't fight him then. In fact, Andrade moved up. Canelo, after he fought somebody, moved back down to fight for that same title against Liam Smith several years ago. So he waited till Andrade had left and vacated that title. Andrade moves up to 160 pounds, and Canelo doesn't fight him over several years while campaigning at 160. Andrade has the opportunity, because he's the WBO title holder, to vacate that belt and become the mandatory for Canelo at 168 pounds. So you can make a roundabout argument that Canelo's gone out of his way not to fight Demetrius Andrade. You can make the argument.
He fought Triple G.
Look at the facts.
He fought Triple G, and he fought Kovalev. He fought guys Danny Jacobs. He fought guys that Demetrius and those other guys probably don't want to fight. Like, they're mentioning Canelo in the 175-pound division. Nobody in 154 or 160 is going up to 175. You mean to tell me you think he's scared of Andrade? Andre's a great fighter, and he's a big threat. But you think Canelo has shown that he's scared of anybody?
No, I said hold on. I said I wasn't calling him a ducker. I'm saying, but if you just look at the facts,
going out his way,
at two different weight classes, Canelo had the option and the opportunity to fight Demetrius Andrade.
But Chris,
he didn't do it. And hold on, let's not act like David Benavidez or Jamal Charlo or Golovkin's different, but other guys in and around there bring so much more to the table than Demetrius Andrade. Let's not act like they are overwhelmingly popular and that they have such a broader fan base, that they're bigger and better options than Demetrius Andrade.
I mean, Triple G brought a huge audience. The fact that Canelo moved up to light heavyweight.
I said Triple G. I said Triple G's different. You put him off to the side there. By the way, Andrade would fight. Hold on, I'm not done with Andrade here. Andrade would fight Triple G in a heartbeat. He's been asking that fight at all times. He would have fought Kovalev too. I mean, a lot of people want to fight Kovalev.
No. We can't say what he would have done. We can't say.
I mean, I never heard him say he would go up to light heavyweight ever. And I'm not saying Demetrius doesn't have the ability to compete with Canelo. I love the guy. I think he can fight. I think it's a great matchup. But a guy can only fight a certain amount of people a year. And this is a business. It's prize fighting. So you got business people telling you this fight makes more business sense. It can't just be for the glory and for the legacy and to please the fans. This is a business. So I think that Canelo made the right business decision, moving up to light heavyweight.
I'm not saying he didn't.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he didn't. We're talking about right now.
I got to agree with Doc right there, Mannix. You're a writer. Choose the right word. You said avoided or scared or, no, that's not, it's a business decision.
No, hold on. Said none of those words. None of those words came out of my mouth.
Said went out his way. Went out his way.
Scared or avoided, but it was something along the lines where he's avoiding him or he doesn't fears him. No, that's not the case. It was a business decision. I agree with Doc right there.
Oh, great. But maybe next time while people are talking, you can listen and get the words right that they actually said. Anyway, next time, by the way, Demetrius Andrade yells at me for not advocating enough for him, I'm directing him back to this segment, this tape.
No, but see, that's the thing. We're not on his payroll. Only you're on his payroll.
Apparently I'm not. I was getting yelled at.
Listen, I don't care if he fights Canelo. I would want him to fight Canelo. I'm not arguing against Andrade. I'm saying Canelo is not ducking anyone. He's not going out of his way. He's not even crossing the street. He's not doing anything to avoid any fighters. He's fighting the best fighters out there. I was in the hotel when you told Demetrius Andrade that he hasn't fought anybody. I would never say that. I know he hasn't fought anybody compared to Canelo, but I'm not going to say that because Canelo didn't fight him, that Canelo's going out of his way. That's crazy. He's fighting Kovalev.
He actually went out of his way to be a free agent in order to make all of those fights actually happen. So if anything, he's doing the total opposite of avoiding people.
Nobody's look. I'm not saying, guys. All we're talking about is right now. Like, we're talking about who should Canelo fight next. I'm making the case for Demetrius Andrade. I think he has as strong a case as Jamal Charlo does and David Benavidez does. As strong a case.
That's a fair statement. I agree with that.
All right. Well, I'm glad we can agree on that. Let's check what people said on the Twitter poll over at Dazn Boxing. Pretty close there. David Benavidez with the lead at just over 30%. Jamal Charlo and Triple G coming in at 27-ish%, and Demetrius Andrade, poor Demetrius, bringing up the rear with 13%.
He's on the list at least. He made some numbers.
I love the potential of him moving to 175 and trying to become undisputed up there. You know, you've got three tremendous fights in Bivol, Joe Smith, and Beterbiev. You know, you've also got great options at 68 still. You've got Gennady Golovkin, the trilogy. You know, you've got Charlo if he moves up, Benavidez. You've got the cruiserweight option as well. Do you know that it's just going to come down to Eddie Reynoso, really, and Saul in terms of what appeals to them and what gets them motivated. They've done so much in the sport. They don't really need, it's not about money for them. It's about what excites them, and it's about a plan. And I feel like they've taken care of business at 168. There's still some good fights for him there. But I think the idea of becoming undisputed in 2 weight classes, knowing Eddie and Saul is the kind of thing that might appeal to them. But ultimately, they're going to sit down, look at all the options on paper and say, yeah, that one.
Yeah, I mean, I hear my name being mentioned with Canelo. You know, that's always going to be the top. He's the top guy right now, you know. So, you know, fighting him or win against him would, you know, make me the pound for pound best. So, you know,
Right.
with that's, you know, that's where we want to head to. But, you know, I'm looking forward to all these fights. Beterbiev, Bivol, you know, I want to unify. So if those fights come to me first to unify a belt, you know, I'll take them. But, you know, if Canelo wants to get, you know, take a shot at light heavyweight, you know, I'll take that fight as well.
That was Matchroom Chairman Eddie Hearn and WBO light heavyweight champion Joe Smith Jr. earlier this week on the DAZN Boxing Show, giving their thoughts on Canelo moving up to 175 pounds. Guys, Canelo is going to move up and try to unify at some point. So I'm going to make the case right off the bat that his first test should be against Dimitri Bivol. Not because I'm overly impressed with what Dimitri Bivol has done recently. He really hasn't gone out of his way to face top-level guys since he fought and beat Joe Smith Jr. a few years ago. But if Canelo's looking to test the waters at 175 pounds, Bivol physically is the safest of the opponents. Canelo has said a couple of times, including to me in interviews, that going up to 175, fighting these bigger guys, fighting these bigger punchers, it's a little bit uncomfortable for him. Bivol is a 175-pound champion who has said over and over again he can fight at 168. He'll probably be on Canelo's physical level as much as anyone since he was fighting at 160 pounds. So, I'm going to go with Dimitri Bivol being the best choice for Canelo at 175. He can fight a 175-pound champion without having to go all the way up and face one of the bigger punchers at 175 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with him being the easier fight at 175 pounds. I think Bivol, honestly, is a better fighter than Beterbiev, in my opinion. See, here's the thing about Beterbiev. He's right in front of you. It'll be a lot easier for Canelo to break him down with his body attack, head movement. But Bivol has a great jab. Remember when Triple G in the first fight landed a lot of jabs? Even in the second fight, he had success with Canelo with that stiff jab. Bivol is longer than Triple G. He has more bounce than Triple G. He can move around the ring better than Triple G. I'm not saying he breaks down his fighters systematically the way Triple G does. He's a surgeon. But Bivol is a more dangerous fight for Canelo stylistically than the other guys, than Joe Smith and Beterbiev. Now, I mean, it's the easier fight to make, obviously. He works with Matchroom. Eddie has a great relationship with Canelo Alvarez. That fight almost happened a while back. So I think it's, organically, it's the best fight because it's the easiest to be made. But in terms of styles, I don't know if he's the easiest fight, but I'd like to see it.
Barack, I think that there is kind of downplaying Beterbiev a little bit too much. It's like, yeah, Beterbiev is right in front of you in the same way like train is right in front of you when it's coming at you.
Don't get me wrong, Chris. I'm not saying he's not dangerous. I'm not saying he's not dangerous.
This guy made Alexander Vostok quit and then retire. That was Vostok's last fight after he was a 175-pound champion. I'm not so sure Marcus Brown is ever going to be back in the ring again after the beating he took against Beterbiev. So I look at Beterbiev as being probably the most dangerous guy out there for Canelo.
He's the most dangerous, and it just makes sense for that to be the guy that he fights at 175. Yeah, maybe was downplaying his ability a little bit, but then again, you know, you said you want to plead your case, and you said you're not impressed that much by Bivol. That's like a lawyer saying, hey, you know what, I want to represent my client, but he's not really that innocent. You know what I mean? So it's like nobody's the perfect guy, but I think Beterbiev is the closest to being perfect. One, you better get him now because today's his birthday. He's 37 years old. You know, we don't know how much longer he's going to have before he declines. Secondly, he'll get the most credit for fighting the most dangerous guy in the division. 17 wins, all 17 by knockout.
Are you sure about that, Barack? Will he get the credit?
No, he'll get the most credit as compared to Joe Smith Jr., Zerto, or anybody, or Bivol. He'll get more credit than those guys. And also, if you think about it, if he beats Beterbiev, then he'll be a unified champ in 4 different weight classes. I think only Sergio Mora did that, right, Mora? I think you did that. That's about it.
That's a good point on the unified. That's a good point on the unified part. But Bivol, I think it's going to be a tough fight because, like Akko's saying, it's the jabs that really give Canelo issues. We all know Floyd Mayweather has that lethal jab, but that's a different speedy jab. The Golovkin jab.
It's not that Bivol. It's not that he's not a tough fight. I'm just saying, like, physically. Like, Canelo, you go up against Beterbiev, you better strap your helmet on, get ready for war. You go up against Joe Smith, hands like bricks. He's got power. He's going to be coming at you all night long. I'm not saying Bivol couldn't beat Canelo, but if you're looking for the least physically taxing fight out there, it would probably be Dimitri Bivol.
But see, that's the thing, though. Think about it. Now, if we go all the way back to 160, Canelo went straight to the lineal champion. That was Cotto. And you 168, he went straight to the lead guy, Callum Smith. He was the #1 guy. He was the Ring Magazine champ. So that's not even in his DNA to go to the weakest guy. Now, people talk about Kovalev. Kovalev was the #1 guy at the time. He was the #1 guy at the time. And
he was not the #1 guy.
No, listen, he was. Yes, he was. He was the #1 guy.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was. He was.
At that
time,
the #1 guy. Beterbiev or Vostok was. Kovalev was a shell of his former self. He almost got beat by Anthony Yarde.
We're still talking about a 5'8" guy. We're still talking about a 5'8" guy who's fighting at 175. Show me anybody else from 154 that wants to fight at 175. We got to give this guy credit. I think he's going to keep the same energy and fight the most dangerous guys in the division, and that's it. And listen, and if you fight Beterbiev, like I always say, there'll be no room for excuses. There's no excuses on standby if you fight Beterbiev. If you fight Joe Smith, they're going to say he picked the lesser one. If you fight Bivol, they're going to say he doesn't have knockout power.
They'll find a reason.
There's not much they can say.
They'll find a reason. They'll say Beterbiev didn't really beat anybody. Who did Beterbiev beat? That's what they're going to say.
But there's never a shortage of hate.
You beat Vostok. I mean, he's now kind of an afterthought because he's been gone for a couple of years. That was a real fighter. Vostok is excellent, and he is an excellent fighter. Beterbiev also knocked out Callum Johnson, which was an excellent win on his resume.
He did get dropped in that fight as well.
He did. That was kind of a flash knockdown. We did that fight a few years ago. He wasn't really hurt at that moment. And then he beat down Marcus Brown with a nasty cut on his forehead.
But let's not downplay a flash knockdown. If he can get knocked down by a flash knockdown, then guess what Canelo can possibly do?
Well,
yeah, thanks for finishing my sentence. I wasn't capable to finish that. I'm glad you.
I would argue, guys, that Callum Johnson at 175 is a bigger puncher than Canelo. Like, not skilled, but a bigger puncher.
Damn, how do you argue that? How do you argue? You broke Billy Joe's face. How do you argue?
At 168, Callum Johnson is
punch. How do you argue
Callum
that?
Johnson's but Callum Johnson can crack. Like we can all agree on that. He can. Like that guy can really punch. There's no doubt. Sergio, weigh in here with Joe Smith, who has been a champion now for 2 fights. He won the title off Vlasov. He defended it against Steve Gerard, who jumped in at the last minute. Why is he a guy that Canelo should consider?
Because he's an overachiever, and you want to root for a guy like this, a blue-collared guy, a lunch pail to work type guy that finally gets to a world championship. And he did it the hard way. He doesn't have that big name that stands out, but he's fought some solid names on the way up to that championship, names that have aged well. So I think he would be one of the names that people will get behind. He has a large following in Long Island. He has that belt. He's a big puncher, one of the biggest punchers in boxing. And he's just one of those guys that's likable. So all those things, he's not too active too either. So he puts pressure on, but he's not too fast with those hands. It's speed and that jab that we're talking about that Canelo struggles with. It's not really size, because size he had with Kovalev, so he was able to handle size. Joe Smith Jr. is the way to go. Bivol with that jab and that calculating way that he boxes and the steady pressure, and if he takes it back to when he was knocking guys out, he has that power as well. So that's a sneaky, dangerous fight. And Beterbiev, he's the #1 guy at 175. I say let him get a little older. I think my calculated risk is with Joe Smith Jr.
Let him get a little older. You want him to be, 50 when he's fighting
I said
him?
calculated risk, and yes, I want him to get older because he's a beast. Stay away from him. Another taxing fight, then you can go after him.
I love Sergio's matchmaking.
That was pretty good though.
Fade away.
That kind of made sense though. Joe Smith Jr. is a kind of guy that we would get behind. You sell a story by telling a story of the of the fighter, and I think if you tell his story, we get behind him.
Think about it. I got the promotion. The blue-collared worker against the red-headed superstar. Boom! I can see it in lights.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
How are you? Wait a minute! Don't tell him that. How are you acting like that's a smart phrase? Like the blue-collar worker versus the redhead superstar.
The blue and the red. It's politics. It's politics, y'all.
It's catchy, baby.
All right.
It's catchy.
All right. Those are our thoughts about Canelo at light heavyweight. But let's check in with the DAZN Twitter poll and see which champion you think Canelo should face first. No surprise, Artur Beterbiev running away with it. Dimitri Bivol coming in at second. Joe Smith right behind him. 13% though say, don't do it, Canelo. Stay away from the light heavyweight division. All right, those were the fights most likely being considered, but this is Canelo Alvarez we're talking about here. And as Eddie Hearn said earlier, it's not about the money, it's fights that excite him. Career-defining fights, which may see Canelo go outside the box. So Sergio, I'm gonna ask you, what wild card fight do you think would elevate Canelo's legacy?
The wild card. Wild card means, it's a tricky, you barely got in the door. So I'm going to go with Ilanga Jr. Makabu. I mean, it's not the most exciting name, but people don't remember names, Mannix. They remember titles. And this champion has a title at cruiserweight. Canelo going all the way up to cruiserweight will make him a 5-division world champion, something only a handful of fighters have been able to do. And that's all people remember. They won't remember the name. They'll remember the titles, the history that he created. He'll be the first Mexican to do that, and there'll be a handful of fighters to do it in boxing history. I say chase history, don't chase the names. That's who you go for. Go for
Will
it.
he be better than Chavez after that?
Yes.
Sergio, I'm all for Canelo going for another title in a new weight class. But if you're gonna go to cruiserweight, shouldn't you fight the best guy at cruiserweight? Shouldn't he step in Maurice Briedis?
No,
and
I
knew you were gonna come up with that, Chris Mannix. Look, Tommy Hearns, who was the first fighter to win championships in 5 divisions, when he went up to light heavyweight, do you know who he beat to win that championship? And it's not Virgil Hill. He beat him afterwards. Do you know the name? You probably forgot the name because I forgot it. I had to look it up. Dennis Andreas. Dennis Andreas from the UK. So that's who he beat at 175 to pick up that championship. People don't remember that. They'll remember Virgil Hill. It doesn't matter though. That's what's going to happen with Makabu. So it's all going to be about history, what goes down on record, and the fact that you're a 5-division world champion, the first Mexican to do that, and a handful of fighters in the whole history, lineage of boxing to ever do that. That's your man. That's what you do.
But Chris, in your mind, you was giving Canelo a softer touch, so to speak, when you said fight Bivol over Beterbiev, and now you want him to fight the killer at
the heavyweight
at
champion
200
of the
pounds.
world.
Good point.
Well, no, like you can certainly look if you look at the resumes there. Like Makabu, bigger puncher at least than Briedis. Briedis I think is more skilled. Like I think he's the most skilled guy right now at the cruiserweight division. So it's not like picking Beterbiev over Bivol. Briedis would just represent, I think, the biggest challenge for Canelo at 200 pounds.
I think anybody at 200 pounds is a challenge because, like I always say, no one else from that division, Canelo's really from 154, but let's say he's 160, no one's going up 30 pounds because I believe it's going to be at 190 nowadays. The WBC changed it. That's ridiculous.
There'll be a Canelo weight. There'll be a Canelo weight.
No, that's a
whatever
WBC weight. Stop. Don't.
But there'll probably be a Canelo weight. Like that's just how it goes. I mean, he's done it before. Like
I wouldn't be upset with that. As small as that guy is, I wouldn't be upset if they set a catch weight for those guys. And then when you think about it, what guy outside of Manny Pacquiao you can say that in all of the weight classes that he fought in, he fought the top guys. Nobody but Manny Pacquiao. It's fair to say that even from 122 all the way up to 154, he fought the top guys. But so many guys have moved up in weight and had soft touches just to grab championships. Canelo, anything beyond 175 and 175 is pushing it because he would have to fight the top guys there. I don't care who he fights at cruiserweight. If they got a strap and it's an easy touch, I support.
Oh, but why are we calling cruiserweight guys easy touches?
No,
they're not
I'm not
easy
saying
touch
it's easy.
for a small guy.
I'm talking
you know
about
what I mean?
amongst those guys, picking one guy out of the cruiserweight champions. Give this guy the soft. I don't even want to see him against Makabu.
I mean, Makabu can hit. Makabu can hit. That's what I'd be most worried about if I'm Canelo, facing a guy that might catch me with something big. But Ak, I want to stick with you here for a second. Look at both ends of the spectrum here. Errol Spence Jr., who has been talked about in the past as a future Canelo opponent, and Alexander Usyk, the heavyweight champion of the world. What about a fight with either one of those guys?
first off, the Usyk fight, yes, it would be the biggest fight. It would be so, first off, I don't want to see him against Usyk. Usyk is a heavyweight. Even if he comes down,
neither.
there's no way. I just don't see Canelo beating Usyk at cruiserweight. Now, at one point, we were excited about the possible fight with Errol Spence. That has faded a little bit. I think that ship has sailed. But Errol is a guy that, as far as stature, he's even bigger than Canelo Alvarez. And in between fights, this guy goes up to 175, 180, 190. He's a big guy. Stylistically, I love that fight. But I don't know if Canelo gets credit for beating an Errol Spence, because we all gonna say that he moved up from welterweight, even though we know how big Errol is on fight night and how much of a threat he would be. In fact, I like that fight more than a lot of the fights that we talked about today. If Errol grows into the weight, becomes a middleweight, beats a couple of guys, I think that's a super fight down the line. But look, he has other fish to fry. He still has to get past Terrence Crawford and win that fight first before he even moves up to junior middleweight. But I like the matchup.
I would say this, Ak, the size disparity between Canelo and Errol Spence is not that significant. I mean, Errol Spence is a huge 147-pounder.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's even bigger than Errol.
Yeah, Canelo's obviously
Can I ask you something,
smallish.
Chris?
Sure.
Can I ask you something? One time, Errol Spence was on Ellie Setback's show, and he said, and Ellie Setback said, "Hey, would you fight Benavidez?" He says, "Nah, he's too big." And you just said that see how small Canelo is, and now you want Canelo to fight somebody bigger or better rather than Makabu. Do you see how that doesn't make sense? Canelo
not
is
bigger,
a small guy.
Not bigger than Makabu necessarily.
Better.
Because again, Maurice Breedis is not a huge
I did
guy.
switch it
He's
up
not
to
a
say
massive
better.
puncher. Like, yeah. Look, I mean, if Canelo's the one talking about going up to that weight class, Eddie Reynoso is lobbying for fights for Canelo at cruiserweight. Yeah, if he's gonna do it.
According to Canelo, Chris, Canelo never lobbied for that fight. He said he had no idea that Eddie wanted that. He just said, "I'm gonna ride with Eddie."
Eddie's the one
if he
lobbying.
wants that.
Eddie's lobbying.
Right,
Eddie's
Eddie.
the one lobbying. He literally lobbied the WBC to get that fight. So if you're going up to that weight, you might as well take on the best guy in the division. Make it a true legacy fight. I'm not here, Sergio, I'm excluding you from this conversation. I swear to God, if you had control of your career, you would have fought Warren Kronberger 9 times in your career. Like your desire to take risks is just, it's just
If
not
it was
there.
up to you, if it was up to you, Canelo will fight Jake Paul next, because I know how much you're a cheerleader for him and Demetrius Andrade. So stop.
Why does Jake Paul have to do with Demetrius Andrade? Anyway, Barack, let's finish here with Zurdo, though. Canelo's countryman, a former 168-pound champion. Canelo doesn't fight a lot of Mexican fighters. Is Zurdo, or can Zurdo become a big enough draw to lure his fellow Mexican into the ring?
If the question is Zurdo? No, not yet. But can he become? Possibly. It might take a while, because right now he's chasing Bivol. And he's chasing Bivol for a reason. If he's able to beat Bivol, then maybe his name gets put into the mix, but his name is still probably wouldn't be that big. Bivol is not even a big name. And if you really want to ask my opinion, I think that Zurdo is probably the least concerned about fighting Canelo. And it's not like because he doesn't want to fight him, it's that he's focused. I think he was a champion at 168. He moved up to 175 7 months before Canelo even thought about moving up to 175. So he had no idea. He went up to 175 to face the top guys to become champion there. He wanted a Bivol fight last year before last. That's the kind of guy he is. So I don't think he has the name that can draw Canelo to him right now. And it'll be really hard for him to even make his name that popular without beating Bivol and maybe even beating Better Beef as well.
Sergio, let's play this out for a second here, because you brought up Jake Paul. If Canelo picked Jake Paul for his next opponent, what would your reaction be?
I will blame you for being such a cheerleader for that circus, but yeah, I don't even want to mention those 2 names. I'm sorry I brought it up, but
Okay,
but
hold on. No, because again, let's play this out. So you were on record then somewhere that Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor was a travesty and should never have happened. You said that.
I don't think I said
No, you did.
about that
You didn't
fight.
say
I
it.
said
You
about
didn't say
Logan
it.
Paul. No,
Roll
I said
the
about
tape.
Logan
You
Paul.
No, you did
It was
not
a
say
Logan
that
Paul.
about Mayweather and McGregor. You definitely did not say that about them. And I would argue that Jake Paul has more boxing skill than Conor McGregor. If Jake Paul fought Conor McGregor right now, who would win? I'd say Jake Paul. He'd probably win.
I don't even care. I'm sorry I brought up you know what's the difference? They both can't take punches. As soon as Mayweather or anyone else, any boxer that knows how to punch hits them in that chin, that's it. It's done. Because you can't train a chin. So no matter how good they look and how good they're knocking out football players and basketball players and these old MMA fighters, as soon as a professional fighter that's 100% with his two fists clips them on that chin,
You know what I want?
That's it.
You know what I want to have happen here? You know what I want? This is what I want to have happen. I want Canelo to pick Jake Paul. I want Canelo to say, Jake, let's have ourselves some fun. Let's make ourselves some money, and I promise I won't beat the daylights out of you. Like let's make that fight happen.
Sorry, fellas. I shouldn't have brought this up.
Will you calm down, Sergio? Will you calm down? Let's have him do that. And then Canelo can look at the landscape, and he can have a press conference, and he can say, you know what, Jermall Charlo, you fight David Benavidez, and I'll keep my eye on the winner. You know what, Dimitri Bivol, you fight Zurdo Ramirez, and I'll keep my eye on the winner. You know what, Joe Smith, you fight Artur Beterbiev, and I'll keep my eye on the winner. You know what, Gennady Golovkin, settle your business with Ryota Murata, and in September of this year, there will be a massive fight somewhere for Canelo Alvarez to take on. So collect that Jake Paul check.
I love that
I
approach.
love what we're fitting. Yeah,
but I think the fighters
Except
themselves.
the Jake Paul part, that was great.
Yeah. Listen. I'm going on record saying I would be very disappointed, even if it was some sort of exhibition. I don't think Canelo does that. I know there's a possibility for a lot of money, but Chris, I like Canelo saying that, but I want those guys to say that themselves, and that's why I like David Benavidez, because he said it on our show once. He said, you know what? I'm not chasing a lottery ticket right now. Let me fight all the other guys. All these guys need to fight each other, and they have to have that attitude themselves. You know what? Maybe I don't deserve the Canelo fight yet. Let's get it on. Demetrius Andrade, Jermall Charlo, let's fight.
Yeah, but then he fought a last-minute replacement and said,
fight.
hey, Canelo's ducking me.
Yeah, you know, but I'm saying those guys need to have that type of approach, because it's, you know, it's giving Canelo, you know, kind of put him on the spot. All right, Canelo, we haven't earned the fight with you. You know what? We're going to bang it out. And afterwards, it's easier to call a Canelo out after you guys fighting each other, because honestly, none of these guys are fighting each other. None of them.
Yeah, and that's a big problem, both when it comes to a Canelo opponent and in boxing in general. All right, before we get out of here, let's check in one final time with our DAZN Twitter poll and see which wild card fight you would most like to see Canelo take. No surprise, Alexander Usyk, close to 52% of the respondents. You've got Errol Spence Jr. coming up, close to 30%, and then Makabu and Zurdo Ramirez both hovering around 9%. I would love it if this poll was redone down the line with Jake Paul thrown into that mix, just to watch Sergio's head just explode. And by the way, Sergio, just so everybody knows, you would fight Jake Paul for a fraction of what Canelo would fight him for. You know it?
Yes, I would, and yes, I would. And Jake Paul has you in his pocket, Chris Mannix, because you became such a promoter, not a writer. You'd be ashamed of yourself.
You'd fight Jesse Vargas on Jake Paul's undercard.
Hey, Sergio, I'm working your corner if you fight Jake. I only want 3% of the purse. I'm good with that. I'll be the water.
Oh, my man. I'm making my comeback.
Now, good. I'm calling the fight. I've officially scored it 120 to 108 for Jake Paul.
Already.
All right, that wraps our show. So until Canelo makes his decision on his next opponent, make sure you check out DAZN News and the DAZN Boxing Show for all the latest breaking news, interviews, and fight sketches. For Ak Barak and Latino Heat, thanks for watching.